Hello, and welcome to Graywood Gardening. Well, summer is drawing to a close, and here at Graywood, we have actually spent the last month and a half or so mostly working on inside projects or non-gardening outside projects. We have managed to keep up with all of the gardens, including the Roman chamomile here next to the sidewalk, which has looked fantastic these past couple of months. In fact, in the summer when it was at its peak of blooming, little Graywood and I came out here for a couple of weeks and picked all of the little chamomile flowers so we could take it to make our own homemade chamomile tea. Unfortunately, I set all the flowers out on a screen down in the basement to dry, and the kitten found them and pretty much destroyed everything. So no homemade chamomile for us this year, but the question is whether these guys will come back next year, because Roman chamomile is a perennial, but it's perennial to zone 5. Normally, that shouldn't be a problem, especially if we get a lot of snow cover, which we will because we shovel this sidewalk and all the snow goes right here. But we also use de-icing chemicals on this sidewalk, which can become pretty lethal, and that means that salt and stuff is going to get shoveled onto the plant. So we'll see how well it can handle that. Alright, well in this video, we're going to spend most of our time harvesting stuff in the veggie garden because September is the month of abundance and it's hard to keep up. But before we head into the veggie garden, we first need to go to the lower terrace garden and finally finish planting everything there out. I'm here in the lower terrace garden, and early this year I direct seeded a bunch of echinacea and rudbeckia in here, and the germination was pretty spotty. In the end, I think we had around 9 or 10 echinacea germinate and only 3 or 4 rudbeckia. So by the time it was obvious that the germination was going to be really bad, so by the time we got to end of June, beginning of July, I went and direct seeded a bunch of those seeds inside in the seed starting layer. I've been growing those up for the past couple of months. I'm now going to plant these plugs out into all of the holes. It is the beginning of September. There should be plenty of time for their roots to get established so they can overwinter and we can have a lovely display next year. That said, in retrospect, I wish I had just grown all of the seeds inside this summer instead of trying to direct seed, because keeping this place weeded in June and July when just these teeny tiny seedlings were coming up was pretty pain in the butt. All right, I know better for next time, but for now, let me get these planted. All right, and there we go. That is a huge difference. And I have to say, the rudbeckia were fantastic, with really big root balls. And in fact, some of the seedlings were even starting to bloom. The echinacea looked great too. The lower terrace garden looks so much better now, all filled in with plants, and I cannot wait to see what this looks like next year in late summer when it all starts blooming. Well, now that we are in the peak pepper production season, I thought it would be a good time to check in on our pepper pot experiment. So at the beginning of this year, I started 30 of the same kinds of bell peppers from seed in 5 different kinds of pots, so 6 for each kind of pot. I did peat pots, paper pots, toilet paper tubes, 6 cells, like 2-inch cells, and then plastic 3.5-inch pots to see whether it would actually make any difference in the final plants in the final harvest. So there are 2 learnings so far from the pot experiment. The first is that for the most part, it doesn't seem to matter what the pot was, even though the plants that were in the paper pots or the peat pots were a little bit smaller when I planted them out. They caught right up to the giant plastic pots in the 6-cell pots, and everything is around the same size with around the same production, with one exception, and that exception is the plants here that were in the toilet paper tubes, which a few of them died, so I only got 3 of these guys planted out. These plants have remained much smaller. They're still producing a lot of peppers, but the peppers they're producing are also a little bit smaller. The second learning that I had, which was not entirely expected, is normally I plant bell peppers in a 1 pepper per square foot system. I planted them a little bit more spaced out here just because I had the space. This bed is about 3.5 feet, so I just put 2 peppers across the 3.5 feet, and I spread them maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet apart this way. And this definitely resulted in significantly bigger plants. Because I have another bed, including a lot of the exact same variety of bell pepper, that I planted at 1 square foot. And those plants are much smaller, they're not branched out nearly as much. And these plants are also just loaded with peppers. Way more peppers being produced at one time. But it also took a lot longer for these plants to develop their peppers. They spent a lot more time growing big, and then they grew growing so many peppers at a time, it took a long time for them to produce. In fact, I think I got red peppers almost a month earlier in the ones that were planted 1 per square foot. And if you're just counting number of peppers per square foot, planting the plants just 1 square foot apart actually gives me more peppers per square foot than spreading them out and getting these plants that are just loaded down with peppers. The other thing I learned with this is some of these plants that got really big and got loaded down with peppers then fell over. I'm not used to having to support my peppers because when I plant them 1 per square foot, they'll kind of just hold each other up, and they don't have so many peppers on them, and the limbs aren't so long. So if I were to plant things spread out this way, again, I would definitely plan for some kind of support system, like maybe a horizontal netting or something. Alright, so I do plan to check up on the pepper pot experiment once more at the end of the year, where we'll actually compare the yield of the peppers of the different plants, and then dig them up and see what the paper pot and peat pot and stuff looks like. But so far, it's looking like the pot doesn't matter a whole lot, which is good news for me, because that means I don't have to use the big, bulky 3.5-inch pots that take up so much valuable space in the grow room. Mrs. Graywood and I are actually going out of town this weekend, and we're doing it without little Graywood, which is very exciting. But it can be tough at this time of year because the garden is just pumping out so much produce every day. So I'm going to run around really quickly and harvest everything that I worry might go bad over the course of the long weekend, so we can get it inside and get it preserved, most of which I think we're going to be freezing. Okay, first thing on the harvest list is green beans. I've got, I think, 4 rows of green beans here, and green beans just grow so fast. If you let them sit, they're going to get way too big. In fact, a bunch of these are already way too big. We actually don't eat a ton of green beans, so these 4 rows are going to give us more green beans than we probably are going to eat all year. But I will just bring these inside once I've got them picked. I will blanch them, toss them in boiling water for about 2 minutes, then in some ice cold water, and then we will bag them up and freeze them and then use them throughout the year. Just a whole bunch of these huge ones here. I really should have been out here probably 3 days ago clearing these out. Okay, I think that's it. And that is actually a lot more green beans than I had planned on. This is probably 5 pounds, 4 pounds of green beans. So moving on, next up is tomatoes. Alright, these are our Roma tomatoes. So this is a determinate tomato. It's a paste tomato that we're going to use for making sauces. Want to get many of these off the plant as look like they're ready. Some of these are a little less than perfect, but that's fine. We're going to be making sauce out of them anyway. So we preserve these by we just wash them, and then we'll toss them in a freezer bag and shove them in the freezer until we're ready to use them. The great thing about this method is that when you thaw them, when you unfreeze the tomatoes, the skin just slides right off. And then you can go ahead and process them into whatever it is you're making. And so one other nice thing about that method is you don't need to make your, canned tomatoes or your tomato sauce or what have you every single time you have tomatoes to be harvested. They just all go in the freezer, and then you can make everything all at once. Okay, so that is a lot of tomatoes. So I'll get these inside, get them washed, get them frozen. I should have another harvest of at least this many tomatoes yet to come from these Roma tomatoes. And hopefully now that I've got all these off the plants, we can get the rest of them ripening a little bit faster. Whew, did not know we were gonna have this many. Alright, it is now the middle of September. We had a lovely trip up at the North Shore, but now I'm kind of regretting that I did not harvest all of the peppers that were ripe, and the bell peppers, because as you can see, a whole bunch of them are actually starting to go bad and they're rotting on the plants. And it's just an incredible shame because it takes so long to get a ripe bell pepper, and then not to have picked them and letting them just go bad on the plants really is disappointing. So today I am going to come out and I am going to harvest all of the bell peppers, hopefully lots and lots of good ones yet. Any bad ones I'm actually going to toss in this white bucket so I can see how many I actually lost because I wasn't on top of it. Let's get started. I am now harvesting peppers from the peppers that are part of my pepper pot experiment. And so that's slowing things down a lot, partially because I planted them further apart, so they're big plants that are just loaded down, but partially because I'm having to stop after every 3 plants and record how many peppers I got, so I can use that toward the totals at the end. I am just finished with all of the peat pot ones, and I'm working on the paper pot ones. One thing that I am seeing already is I had 2 varieties of red pepper. I had one called Red Knight and one called Ace. I don't remember which is which. So each pot type had 3 of one variety, 3 of another variety. And one thing I am seeing is one of these varieties is producing consistently much smaller peppers than the other variety. And it's not like they started producing sooner either, so I'm happy I trialed these 2 varieties against each other, because for us, it looks like one of them does much better, and I'll have to look up my notes to figure out which one that is. I'm also going to need another container here to hold all of these peppers. Alright, so this is kind of an unfortunate lot of peppers to have to toss just because we didn't get around to picking them in time. I mean, that's a lot of peppers. On the other hand, this is a ridiculous quantity of peppers to have. The pepper plants aren't actually done yet. And actually, I am not done yet either. So I do want to go now back to all of the plants and start picking green peppers. Because it's the middle of September, if we're lucky, we're going to have another 2 or 3 weeks of pepper growing, because the slightest frost will kill all the plants. So what I want to do is I want to go cut off every single pepper that's growing on the plant, except for the largest 1 or 2, just in hopes that we can get more ripe peppers out. I don't want the plants spending their energy on all of these tiny little peppers that were just fertilized. I want to cut all those off, focus on getting just a couple more peppers per plant to maximize the harvest. And that means I need more containers. Maybe I can get this in here. Alright, this might actually be more work than just picking all the peppers was. Because some of these plants have a lot of these little, just pollinated little pepper things. Alright, well, I think at the end of the pepper picking, we actually ended up with 135 bell peppers that were keepers, and 49 that I threw away because they got overripe on the vine, which is too bad. Well, I am back to digging holes. This is the final in-ground bed I have to dig out for this year. And that is everything that I have for this video. Next time, we will be getting into October, which means it's going to be time to start putting some of the plants to bed. But so far, the forecast says beautiful weather for the next at least 2 weeks, which means we have a lot more gardening left to do. All right, until next time, happy gardening.